Stephen Kinnock.
Many thanks, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman's budget, far from a budget that will fix the roof while the sun is shining, strikes me rather as one that sends the roof tiles flying whilst the storm clouds gather. Economic growth is crucial, Mr. Speaker. It brings tremendous benefits. Between 1997 and 2008, it lifted millions of people out of poverty. An economy that is not growing is failing. But the question, Mr. Speaker, is what kind of growth do we need? The fact is that Britain in 2015 is more unequal, divided and insecure than it has been at any time since 1945. We know that inequality between rich and poor in the United Kingdom has widened in recent years. We also know, Mr. Speaker, that inequality is bad for economic growth because the majority of the population are not feeling the recovery at all and are therefore unable to contribute to it. If the Chancellor wishes to do away with state support for the working poor, then instead he must commit to investing in a genuine, broad-based and deep recovery that works for everyone, based on a real industrial strategy and plan for long-term economic growth. This has to start with a renaissance for our manufacturing sector. In 1970, manufacturing accounted for 1/3 of the British economy, and now it is barely at 10%. Mr. Speaker, the need to drive a renaissance in our manufacturing sector is imperative for 3 reasons. First, the manufacturing sector achieves far higher levels of productivity than the service sector. Second, it produces much higher quality and higher income skilled jobs than is the case in the rest of the economy, as well as far greater geographical spread of skills and jobs than does the financial sector. Thirdly, manufacturing enables us to be able to pay our way in the world. Our balance of trade deficit is currently higher than it has ever been since the 1830s. This is a huge drag on our economy and can only be dealt with by increased manufacturing for exports. Mr. Speaker, given the central part that manufacturing has to play in building this new kind of growth, it's absolutely imperative that the Chancellor sets out now a new industrial strategy, which I think should be based on 6 key pillars. The first is to produce highly motivated, skilled young people who are willing and capable of entering the worlds of manufacturing, engineering and wider industry. Second, the UK has a strong research capability, but we struggle when it comes to driving our new ideas and technologies into the business sector. A proper industrial strategy would provide enhanced support to the catapult centres, which have provided a welcome boost to the commercialisation of R&D, but much remains to be done and they need more resources. Third, on energy, there's a pressing need for a 10-year plan that lays out the investment path required to build a secure, competitively priced and clean energy supply. The growth of clean energy is a huge opportunity for the UK economy, with projects such as the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon promising to deliver thousands of high-pay, high-productivity jobs. Next is the UK's inadequate transport and digital infrastructure. It's a 4th point that is particularly important as it contributes to the chasm that exists between London and the rest of the country. There's a pressing need for a long-term infrastructure plan that will be properly connecting the country and providing the launch pad for a nationwide manufacturing renaissance. Fifth, on finance, the UK's banking system is fundamentally skewed towards the stimulation of private consumption, asset value inflation and personal debt. It's essential that a new financial support system for manufacturing is created that is geared towards enabling the creation and growth of the manufacturing sector. Germany's Sparkassen should be the model. Truly local banking that is an integral part of the regional economy, focused exclusively on lending to start-ups and small and medium-sized manufacturing businesses. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on procurement, the government manages a multi-billion-pound budget for the procurement of everything from care services to steel for major infrastructure projects, and its approach is far too laissez-faire. Far more can and should be done to ensure that UK products and services are prioritised for procurement. This can be done without violating EU competition rules, simply through tighter definition of value for money clauses in tender documents. It is right that contracts funded by the British taxpayer should be won and delivered by British companies. Mr. Speaker, this industrial strategy sounds wonderful on paper, but it's worthless if not underpinned by strong support for the steel industry, which is the critical foundation industry for our manufacturing renaissance. Steel plays into every aspect of the long-term strategy we need, And as the Member of Parliament for Aberavon, which hosts the largest steelworks in the country, I must draw the House's attention to the importance of the steel industry. No longer can government-tendered projects like the refurbishment of the Severn Bridge be allowed to go ahead using French steel when the best steel in the world is British. This government needs to take into consideration also the importance of compensating heavy industries like steel for the cost of the carbon tax which eats into productivity. Going back on promises that were made in the last Parliament would leave steel companies exposed to 70% of the cost of EU renewable levy policies. This would be seriously detrimental to the steel sector, wider manufacturing, and ultimately harmful to the UK economy. Mr. Speaker, the time has come for a government which is prepared to plan for a new type of long-term sustainable growth that produces high-wage, high-value-added jobs and gets the country making and exporting, rather than the agenda for perpetuating the status quo of growth fuelled by debt and consumption. Until we have such a plan, I cannot support this budget, and I therefore exhort the Chancellor to go back to the drawing board, roll up his sleeves and come back with a strategy for a new kind of growth, a growth that will build a united kingdom of strength, purpose and resilience.
Yeah.